Why, hello, learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors, with first giving a shout out to Idle Courses Academy. Idle Academy is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login for just $88 a month. Check out all the details at idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. Okay, now let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and happy Halloween. Welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am a senior instructional designer, author, blogger, podcaster, YouTuber, and a whole bunch of other things that make me your learning nerd. I consider it my passion and my purpose to be able to help you along your own learning journey wherever you are at. All are welcomed on into the show. And of course, you can find out everything about this show and myself over at drlukehobson.com. Before we begin today's episode, I have to just say thank you, and also I am paying attention. And I say this from the last episode that I released talking about andragogy, Dr. Malcolm Knowles' principles, and how we can apply andragogy into our learning experiences. That by far is already on track to be my most number one downloaded podcast episode, and it just came out. So it was pretty cool to see about how many of you were so keen to learn more about andragogy, to learn a little bit more about the learning science side of the house. And I read you loud and clear. I will for sure dive on in further into learning for adults, but of course into more about how learning actually works. That's a super fun topic. I'd love to be able to do that. So you know what? If that was an episode that you really did enjoy, well, I promise you more of those are going to be coming in the future. But what are you in store for today? Today, we're going to be talking about 5 habits that completely changed my life. They say that when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. We all have our different versions of what rock bottom means. For me, it was feeling like I didn't have a purpose. In my early 20s, things were looking pretty bleak. I was trying to figure out this thing called life, and I chose the path of least resistance because, well, it was easy. It was easy not to care about the present and the future. My personal and professional relationships were awful. I didn't care about my job or about my work. I tried to escape reality by drinking one too many adult beverages. And over time, I put on a significant amount of weight, and I had a wake-up call one day that really put everything into perspective. When you feel seriously winded by walking up a flight of stairs, here's your sign. It's time to make some changes. Little did I know that those changes would lead to incredible relationships, working at MIT, University of Miami, competing in natural bodybuilding shows, and sharing instructional design with you. It's weird. Life is weird. I feel like 22 isn't that far away, but I'm about to be turning 36, and I am a completely different person. So what happened? I started to embrace 5 habits that became a change of lifestyle. They didn't all click at first, but over time, I began to adopt more practices, found my own way, and now I'm sharing them with all of you. Also, I really don't expect you to embrace all of these at once, nor do I want you to do that. Learning is an ever-evolving process that takes time. If it was easy, we would all be superhumans. I'd like to just share what I've experienced with some personal reflections, and even if these words help you ever so slightly, it's going to be worth it. Habit number 1 is acceptance and channeling negativity. Let me take you into my past subconscious for a second. It's not your fault. Everything happens for a reason. They didn't mean to say it like that way. I found myself hoping to hear these phrases as if I wasn't directly responsible for the consequences of my own actions. When I could shift the blame off of myself to a particular outlier or some oddity, it was easy to brush things off and to move along with my day. When my world was constantly falling apart and the only common denominator was me, well, maybe it was time to do some soul searching. I began to reposition how I viewed problems and situations. For instance, instead of thinking, if only this other person didn't apply for the job, I would have gotten it. My mindset changed to thinking, I accept that this happened. I'm going to use this as motivation to work harder than ever until I'm undeniably the best candidate there is. In essence, I use negativity as fuel to channel my emotions and direct them towards a goal. I'm going to assume that when I said acceptance, by the way, you were picturing me under a Bodhi tree, searching for enlightenment and peace, and practicing yoga. But that's not my inner monologue at all. The inner voice inside of my head has been the I'll show you mentality kind of a thing. If I'm doubted, I work twice as hard. And I thought for a while that I was insane and broken for thinking this way until I heard someone else actually share about this, and his name is Dr. Lane Norton. If you don't know who he is, he's a scientist and a prominent figure space inside of the fitness community, and he shared this one day of a similar mindset on a YouTube video. Now, is this the healthiest approach for processing negativity? I don't know. I don't think so, but this is what I have learned to accept about myself. I can't see this being a long-term solution, but this practice of accepting reality and then processing negativity as motivation has truly helped me to get out of my own way, and I found this is what worked for me. Habit number 2 is focusing on sleep and waking up early. If you read any self-help book, I guarantee you'll find a chapter about waking up early. But why? What's the big deal with getting up before the sun? A study conducted in 2019 actually went inside of this a little bit to explain more about this. They took a group of night owls and changed their habits over time into making them become morning people. The results? Significant improvements to self-reported depression and stress, as well as improved cognitive and physical performance that measured during the typical suboptimal morning hours. I acknowledge that there is no way this can work for everybody, and this is just one study out of the thousands of sleep studies that you can find. What I can tell you, though, is that I decided to place a significant level of importance on scheduling my sleep and sleeping for at least 8 hours a night. I wasn't necessarily a night owl. I wouldn't identify as that. However, my schedule at the time was all over the place. I would fall asleep anywhere between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. So this, of course, meant that I would go on some type of reckless journey every night with falling asleep on my couch and then being dazed and confused as to what time it was when I awoke. Starting every day with an unhealthy dosage of unpredictability and usually skyrocketing out of bed because I was late for work was not that sustainable. Writing my dissertation, or should I say lack thereof, forced me into rethinking about my sleep habits. I always told myself that I would write more after work or buckle down on the weekends, but yeah, that never ever panned out. Like clockwork, I found myself making excuses, and my dissertation sat there, mocking me. In a bit of an extreme way, I decided that if I just get up earlier than literally everyone else, I will have zero excuses for distractions. The first time I did this, I made such a substantial dent in my writing that I vowed to become a morning person. It was not an easy task. I was so used to mindlessly scrolling on my phone until I passed out that I had to make some real changes to my phone habits. For instance, I knew I would pick up that addicting light box if it was anywhere near me. I had to place it in another room so I would force myself to wind down. I found myself, without thinking, reaching for where my phone was on the table, only to remind myself that indeed it's in the other room. Yes, smartphones are extremely addicting. I finished my doctorate in 2019, and I never went back to my old ways. Waking up early is now a natural thing, and it's one of the key reasons for why I'm so productive. Whenever people ask me about how I have the time to juggle all of my projects, the simple answer is that I make the time. And for me, making the time is by powering down early at night without my darn iPhone and then waking up earlier than anyone else. Habit number 3 is exercise. Have you read the book Spark yet? And if you haven't, you should. And there's an affiliate link inside of the show notes. And if you do buy the book through that link, by the way, that really helps me with keeping the lights on around here. So I thank you. But the book Spark, which is written by Dr. John Rady, an associate clinical professor of psychology at Harvard Medical School, details about the power of exercise has on the brain. I'm going to assume you know that exercise is good for you, but how exactly does it help you? With exercise, you can reduce stress, increase your mood, fight memory loss, function better, reduce aggression, lower addiction tendencies, and even boost your intellect. And that last one, that's interesting. The benefits of exercise in the brain are undeniable, but I really wanted to see for myself what would happen if I took on exercise in a serious manner. Besides the physical results, would I actually feel better? Would I become smarter? Just what exactly would happen if I gave this 100% of my effort? So as you all definitely know me by now, you can bet that indeed I went all in. To start with this process, I made a game plan around how learning works. I took into consideration my prior levels of knowledge, aka with my past experiences of repeatedly quitting on fitness, identifying the moments of when I was facing pressure to quit, and thinking about my circumstances. What could I do differently the next time that I'm faced with the same obstacle? I prepared before this actually happened. And I have to say, it was fascinating to do this before making such a commitment. And I really, really wish I can go back in time and tell myself about the importance of doing this. What no one tells you about with trying to exercise and eat right is that A, it's stupidly hard, and B, to do things correctly and sustainably, it will take way longer than you think. Companies who sell supplements and diets and gym memberships and workout equipment have done a brilliant job with marketing to consumers about how everything is fast, easy, painless. It's much, much harder to sell the fact that our cozy lifestyles have warped our senses, that you now need to seek pain and discomfort in order to change for the better. Seeking pain and discomfort. Great name for a metal band, by the way. Anyway, knowing how hard this was and trying to be able to do this, I decided to not associate a timeline with my goals, which feels kind of weird. But my goals were not to lose X amount of pounds. The goals revolved around mentally feeling better, having more energy, reducing stress, and once again, can I increase my brain power? I was so curious. Could this actually happen? However long it took, that was going to be my deadline. About 10 months later, 10 months, 10 months later, I was a different human. Yes, I saw physical progress after about the first month or so, but the new cognitive abilities came afterwards. I felt like my brain was finally firing on all cylinders for the first time. My habits changed, my cravings changed, my desires changed. Basically, everything changed, and all for the better. All of the positive changes made me want to push this even further, and I found myself competing in natural bodybuilding shows. Something I never, ever thought that I would say. This fitness lifestyle, though, is actually why I started podcasting. Which is really, really interesting to think about this years later, because I wanted to share with people about what I found that worked for me in regards to taking learning and then combining it with fitness and having this different type of approach that I really didn't hear anyone else go into. If you want to learn about this, by the way, and this entire adventure, you can check out the podcast episode where I talk about all of this inside of each and every step. It's kind of like my own little, fitness podcast episode, if you will. And of course, that's down below inside of the show notes. So all in all, the point is exercising and eating right completely changed the game for me when it came to my energy, drive, passions, motivations, and more. It made me want to pursue more opportunities, and it's still a part of who I am today. Habit number 4 is saying yes. In 2008, Jim Carrey starred in a movie called Yes Man. Carrey played Carl Allen, a miserable man who decided to turn his life around by constantly saying yes to everything after he attended a self-help course. While at first this led to amazing changes in Carl's life, eventually he realized that too much of anything, even positivity, can lead to disaster. While Carl overdid it, there is a power behind saying the word yes. The more I started to share about instructional design and online learning on the internet, the more opportunities came about. Initially, these terrified me. I was just trying to share about the joys of learning. There was no secret agenda of trying to build a brand, write books, create courses, or anything else like that. There was zero plan for any of this. I mean, clearly, there wasn't any long-term thinking as you were listening to the Dr. Luke Hobson podcast. And if I was more creative back then, I would have found a better way to incorporate instructional design into the title somewhere for SEO purposes. Which, by the way, please rate the show as a 5 stars wherever you are listening, because that's how people find this podcast when they search for instructional design, because it's not in the title of the show. So hey, I really appreciate all the reviews you folks have been leaving for this podcast. But anyway, back to the story, is that every time I created a new piece of content and I put it online, a new opportunity came inside of my inbox. Now, let me say that I was batting 1,000 by shooting down every single opportunity. And here's why. A, I didn't understand why people wanted me to speak to their students and their employees. B, who do they think I am? I didn't feel qualified enough to do anything of the sort. I'm just sharing stuff online. C, my schedule was a dumpster fire. Adding more to that was really not going to help me. And D, it was so much easier just to say no and not think about things. It became hard to say no when friends began to ask me to speak at their events. Eventually, I caved in. I said yes to speaking to a group of instructional design graduate students for Holly Owens. Shout out to Holly and to all of her things. If you're not following her online, you absolutely should be. She is amazing. But after speaking with Holly's students, this speech went so incredibly well that I just had this feeling inside of my head of, Luke, it's still fresh in your head. Go record it. Don't wait. Don't do anything. Just push the record button and see what happens. So I did. I pushed record, I put it on YouTube, and now it's entirely possible you only know me from YouTube. That was the first video that I ever made, was that speech of what I wish I knew before becoming an instructional designer, and that kind of became my brand over time. The point is that I started to say yes to every opportunity after that. I wanted more experience, exposure, connections, and just to meet more people. This was also at the beginning of the pandemic stages, so that clearly we all were trying to find our new form of way of life and our new social circles during that time frame. I never went into these conversations thinking that I was going to get something out of them, but the more I connected with others, the luckier I became. So if you were like me and you just kept on saying no to everything, maybe say yes to at least one thing. Give it a try and see where it can actually take you. And the 5th habit is the Pomodoro Technique. What I like about the Pomodoro Technique is that it actually works. I wrote my book in 6 months due to this technique. And if you haven't heard about it before, this is a time management method where you have long periods of time dedicated to strictly working, and then you follow that with short breaks, which are also timed. What started off as a cooking technique using a literal kitchen timer has evolved into one of the most productive ways to get work done. So here's how it works. You set a timer for 25 minutes, and you wait to hear the bell ring. As soon as you do, that's when your break kicks in, and then you wait for another 5 minutes until the bell once again rings. And then you basically keep on repeating this until the job is done. Yes, if you are wondering, you are essentially training your brain to become like Pavlov's dog, where every time that you hear the bell, you are going to have a reaction. So every time I hear that ding, I immediately think it's time to start working. Not Not too sure if I'm happy about that, but once again, this really does work. While searching online for studying techniques one day, I came across an entire dedicated section on the internet that I had never seen before, and these were called Study With Me videos. These videos would have relaxing lo-fi music playing in the background while the timer was on the screen for the Pomodoro Technique. And I didn't realize this until I started to dig further into everything, but you can find thousands of Study With Me Pomodoro videos. What I love about these is that you can find them for however long you feel like working. You do not need to just do 25 minutes like I was saying before. 25 minutes for me isn't long enough. I can definitely go for a lot longer than that. So for me, I like the 50-10 split where it's 50 minutes of working and then the 10-minute break. And I'll include a link down below for you that has a link to one of these videos that does have the 50-10 split. Remember how I said before that I'll wake up early before anyone else to get work done? While that is extremely effective, it does feel isolating after a while. Some YouTubers film themselves doing the Pomodoro Technique beside you, which oddly feels like you have a new study buddy. This idea that someone else is working hard helps to keep you being accountable and has a sort of presence like a bunch of people are working together in a library. While you would never talk to them or approach them, seeing other people read and working hard is motivating, and you feel that with these videos. There is one YouTube series called Study MD that I would highly recommend. Study MD was created by Jimmy Kang, a cardiac surgery resident in Canada. He doesn't know me, but he has worked alongside me for years. And I found myself every time I was like, oh, it's time to get to work, I would go to one of his videos and all of a sudden Pomodoro Technique is there. He's already working and studying for his exams. I don't know where he's currently at in his journey to become a doctor, but he has definitely been alongside me for this ride. And it's actually interesting just thinking about that from an accountability perspective. And of course, I grew so obsessed with this idea that I wanted to try it myself. So I made a few of my own videos. I believe I have 3 Study With Me videos. And if you want to study alongside with me, back when I had my crazy wizard beard, you can find those videos on YouTube. And the one thing I learned about from making those videos is that it's hard. It's hard to record yourself sitting still for hours and then adding music and then trying to not get flagged with copyright violation. And anyway, that's another story for another day. But the point is, I would highly recommend using the Pomodoro Technique and certainly using the Study With Me series to being able to have a person alongside with you along for this ride and helping you to stay accountable. So those are my 5 best tips I can give you around the habits that have really helped to transform and to change my life. You never know what's going to happen if you actually continue and practice and try to be able to go through with any of these different forms of habits. Once again, this is not for you to try to be able to do everything all at once. You know about learning, and you know that if you do too much too soon, you are destined to burn out. It is not going to work. So take your time and try one of these. And if you have already done one of these so far and you find them really helpful, tell me on LinkedIn, tag me, share this episode, and let me know about what you have found from trying to be able to practice any of these different forms of habits that I've mentioned. And before I close out the show, I had to definitely say 2 things. The first is I want to say congrats to all the students who graduated from Instructional Design Institute. The cohort ended the other day. And amazing, truly amazing to see all of the transformations of the students, to look at their portfolios, to hear about what they have done. It's just mind-boggling to see about all the awesomeness when it comes to what they're now able to do. And I also want to say a big thank you to all of you who have already applied for the next cohort, which starts in December. December 11th is when the 3rd cohort of Instructional Design Institute is going to be up and running. I have already received a bunch of applications from you. So thank you so much for believing in me, wanting to be able to take part inside of this learning journey with me. I deeply appreciate your time. And of course, I will be writing back to you if everything looks great as far as for how we can work together inside of the future. And as always, folks, leave a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this show. That's what helps this show to grow, because I didn't think about SEO when it comes to being able to name this show. But now over the years, it finally does pop up if you search for instructional design podcasts. But hey, as always, the more that you share this episode, the more that you share about the podcast, the more people find out about it, and the more we can try to be able to educate folks about instructional design, designing learning experiences, online learning, and all that fun, nerdy stuff. As always, I appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening to this episode. Hey folks, that's really all I have for you. You can find out everything else over at drlukehobson.com for what I have going on, but that is it. So hey, stay nerdy out there. I'll talk to you next time.